Welcome to our discussion topic of this hour. We are going to talk about sulfur for oxide. Now, sulfur for oxide is a gas that can be formed from the combustion between sulfur and oxygen. Okay, the reaction would be sulfur plus oxygen gas to give you what? Sulfur for oxide. Now, this would be the combustion reaction that would do what? That would occur. We can prepare sulfur for oxide in the lab by reacting sodium sulfite with hydrochloric acid. Okay, that is the first one. So, sodium sulfite. Remember, I'm saying sulfite, not sulfate. Okay, sulfite meaning we have 3 oxygen atoms. Sulfate means we have 4 oxygen atoms. Okay, so by reacting your sodium sulfite, you can prepare it by reacting your sodium sulfite with hydrochloric acid. Okay, so if you react sodium sulfite with hydrochloric acid, you're going to form a salt which is going to be sodium chloride, water, and sulfur for oxide. Sodium chloride, and then you're going to form water, and you're going to form sulfur for oxide. When you balance the equation, you're going to balance by putting a 2 where? A 2 there. So this is one of the method you can use. Okay, so this means that our W can be, our solid W is what? It is sodium what? Sodium sulfite. Okay, and this means that our solution X can be what? So solution S can be what? Hydrochloric what? Acid. Now, the other method that you can use in preparation is still by reacting sodium sulfite with sulfuric acid. Now, when you react, you're going to form a sulfate salt, which is going to be what? Yes, sodium sulfate, okay, which is going to be sodium sulfate plus water plus sulfur for oxide. So the third method, though, so this means still our solid W will be sodium sulfite, okay, and our solution X, it can also be sulfuric 6 what? Sulfuric 6 acid. Now, the other method that you can use in preparation of a sulfur for oxide, you can see that is our gas here, is by reacting copper, okay, copper with concentrated what? Sulfuric 6 acid, where you're going to form copper 2 sulfate, water, and sulfur for oxide. Copper 2 sulfate, water, and sulfur what? Sulfur for oxide. You're going to balance this equation by putting, let us see, is hydrogen balanced? Is our oxygen balanced? So we are going to balance by putting what here? The oxygen atoms are not balanced. Okay, hydrogen is balanced. It's 2 here, it's 2 here. Oxygen, we have 4 here. Oxygen, we have how many? We have 7. 4 plus 2, 6 plus this one, 7. So we start by balancing oxygen and by putting a number on the side that has the least number of oxygen atoms. So we start by balancing by putting a 2 there. And if you want to balance the whole equation, you're going to balance by putting a 2 here in sulfuric 6 acid and a 2 where we have water, and your equation is going to be fully balanced. So these are the 3 methods that you can use in preparation of your sulfur for oxide in what? In the lab. Now, here you can see, so we have formed our sulfur for oxide. So we can use hydrochloric acid, sulfuric 6 acid also, and hydrochloric acid and sulfuric 6 acid with sodium sulfite, and also sulfuric 6 acid by reacting it with a metal, which is what? Your copper. Now, so you have formed your gas. This is your gas. Now, this is sulfur for oxide. It's coming like that till there. You can see we have a red litmus paper there. Why do you think we have it there? So they're testing for the property or the chemical property of sulfur for oxide. They are checking if it is a set, the reduction, if it is a reducing agent, or the bleaching property of sulfur for oxide. Okay, now sulfur for oxide 1 is an acidic gas. Now if they had kept here a blue litmus paper, okay, if they kept here a blue litmus, if we had a blue litmus paper, we'll know that they are testing to see if you know that sulfur for oxide is acidic. So sulfur for oxide, and it's supposed to be what? It is a wet blue litmus paper, wet red litmus paper. Now, our wet blue litmus paper will turn to red. It will turn to what? It will turn to red because sulfur 4 oxide is an acidic gas. Okay? The pH of sulfur 4 oxide is what? It is acidic. Now, because we have our red litmus paper, now we know they are not testing for what? The acidity. If it was blue, we are saying it is testing for what? Acidity. Acidity, okay? But if it is red litmus paper, they're testing to see if you know the bleaching property. The bleaching property of what? The bleaching property of sulfur 4 oxide. So your sulfur 4 oxide is going to bleach your red litmus paper and turn it to white, okay? So the reaction that is going to occur there is simply going to be, so let me write here. So we are going to write it as chemical properties, okay? Properties of sulfur 4 oxide. One is now the bleaching property. We have the bleaching property. And we are saying the reaction that is going to occur here is we are going to have now our sulfite ions, okay? We are going to have our sulfur 4 oxide. It is why it is wet, yeah? So plus the water there, the bleaching property is going to be the sulfur 4 oxide reacting with water. The reaction is reversible to form a sulfurous acid, which is going to be H2SO3, the bleaching property, okay? Sulfurous acid, which is H2SO3, plus sulfurous acid, which is going to further dissociate to form our sulfite ions plus hydrogen ions, okay? Now, these sulfite ions, the sulfite ions are going to react with the red litmus paper, which is what now we are going to call our dye, to give us, it is going to give us what? It is going to bleach to give us a white matter. So it's going to be your dye, which we are saying it's the white what? Now the white matter which was bleached, okay? Plus what? Plus sulfate. Plus sulfate what? Plus sulfate ions, okay? Now, remember, if it is reducing, the sulfate ions are going to be what? To be oxidized on this other side. So that is the bleaching property. Now, something you need to know about the bleaching property of sulfur 4 oxide is it is temporary. So this means once it has turned to white, when you expose, so we are saying the bleaching property is temporary, meaning whatever is decolorized by the sulfur 4 oxide is going to regain its color again once it is exposed to what? Once it is exposed to air because of the process of what? Oxidation. So that is the bleaching property of sulfur 4 oxide. Another property or another chemical property of sulfur 4 oxide we are going to talk about is its reducing property or its reducing, property. So we are going to write it. So another property that we're going, chemical property of sulfur 4 oxide is going to be sulfur 4 oxide, the reaction of sulfur 4 oxide with metals, okay? So sulfur 4 oxide is going to dissociate to form sulfur. Your sulfur 4 oxide dissociates to form sulfur and oxygen gas, okay?